You are listening to OffPlanet Radio at offplanetradio.com.
This is Science Meets the Supernatural.
Standing Rock, all the ancestors are showing up here. If you were there, it was supernatural there.
There is no difference between generating water from the sky doing a rain dance and doing zero-point energy machine.
There's money power, and then there's spiritual power.
Water from the sky doing a rain dance.
And they have profound spiritual power in relation to this entire situation. That they're the star people. Their job essentially is to bring in electricity through water. That's what he said. So there's a whole total repositioning of consciousness that's going on for those that have been monitoring the cold fusion forums and all the activity that's been going on for the last 33 years regarding this situation. It is the strangest landscape without a doubt. I see ancient gaslighting going on. You know what I mean? That's landscape. Benjamin Wolfe, who wrote Metalinguistics, he said it's easier if you can get a Hopi Indian to explain the theory of relativity than a scientist. He said it's easier if you can get a Hopi Indian to explain the theory of relativity.
Welcome to OffPlanet Radio. I'm Randy Moggins. It is the middle of the month of August, recording this particular podcast on August 16th in the early evening hours. Welcome. And I do have somebody with me. James Martinez is going to join me. We're going to talk about, low energy nuclear reaction, cold fusion. But more importantly, we're going to go to the underbelly of the whole thing and the consciousness behind free energy and where we as humanity have to evolve very quickly into. It comes out of conversations that James and I have had kind of ongoing. And those of you who stick around for the end of it will get the fly-in-the-wall version. Those of you on the public side will get the crucial information that you need. There's a lot of links. This will be very information dense. And with that, we welcome back again James Martinez. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. And I'm this subject, which, you've lived with for how many decades now, the ongoing work behind the scenes and obviously moving forward, but we'll kind of lead it off with what has occurred in the month of July in Mountainview, California, with the International Conference on Cold Fusion Plus, and that's spearheaded by a number of people, not the least of which is Carl Page, who is the brother of Google co-founder Larry Page. We suspect that he is the light side of the two, and we hold out hope for those who are still on the dark side as well. But at this conference, those of you who have video will see what we're going to talk about, which is the actual live debut of the Brillouin technology, which is the hot tube hydrogen technology that's been developed by Brillouin. And James, maybe kind of lead it off with what occurred out in Mountainview.
Okay, so I have been talking to all these scientists for years, and I'd been invited to these yearly ICCF meetings where all the top science guys get together and discuss all the latest developments of what's occurred over the previous year. And I had no interest in attending one of these things because of the position the technology was in at that point, because it was still, there's still fencing over a lot of matters. This particular one, though, I was intent on witnessing because it had a very, very, very special situation that took place. For those that have been monitoring the cold fusion forums and all the activity that's been going on for the last 33 years regarding this situation, it is strangest landscape without a doubt. This one unique was, for the first time ever, an LENR device was placed outside of a lab and was running. That was the first time a device like this had been running outside of a lab in a public space where people could come look at it and look around it and stand it and look above it and examine it, essentially. And that was a complete, total change in the way things have been done if you would consider the ramifications of what this stuff is. The fact that a public showing took place, because there was arguments behind the scenes about whether or not there was any benefit whatsoever of an placement of one of these devices outside of a public space. And for the novice that doesn't even understand what I'm talking about, if people had lived what has occurred over the past 33 years in this space, believe me when I tell you, a device working outside of a lab is a very, very, very big deal. Very big deal, because the history of this is not exactly friendly. No. It didn't start off friendly whatsoever. So that's why I attended it, because I wanted to witness it and then witness the social events prior to it occurring, and then during and after, and who was saying what and what the response was. I might add that, and this is important to know, because I was the one making the calls on this prior to this event. I was basically tasked with inviting press there, right? And I did get press there. There's press passes made out for a group of people, but they had to change their plans. They didn't end up going there. But what's interesting is the corporate press, the obsolete press, the formerly established press. Yeah. They had no interest in attending this, and they were invited. They're invited. And nobody showed up, which is very, very interesting. When you consider the fact that it'd been covered by the corporate press, Mockingbird Press, previously when they did the 60 Minutes piece. However, one of the people that appeared in that 60 Minutes piece was a guy named Rob Duncan. And his role in all of this is profound, very profound, because he was the gentleman that was brought in to measure the measuring stick of the calorimetry, which determines if there is excess heat to begin with. And he was there. So it was well worth going to, but the terrain was very, very strange to me, even though I understood what was going on there. It was a historical event. And it was only, the insiders and the people that had been working on this for decades. They were all there. This was like old news to them. They were in a completely different mind space in terms of what the future should be and could be. But that was barely discussed when it should have been discussed the entire time. So it was a very strange situation there. Very strange. I mean, when you have Navy guys coming up to you and telling you, "Hey, James, we know about you. We're creating electricity from our reactions immediately. We do keep doing it, but we don't know how we're doing it. But can you help us?" Like, can you help us? You're creating electricity, which is the big chimichanga taboo issue of all time, and they told me when I initially started talking to them that they'd been engaging 60 Minutes again because they followed up on what was going on many years later. So it was very unusual. The whole thing was very unusual because if you were there and walked into this, you would know what you were looking at. Anyway, if we put you in front of one of these, you would know.
For the people who have the ability to watch the video, and we'll put this video link up, how there's several different platforms we'll hit here. On YouTube, we'll bake it into the video that runs with this audio presentation. I will put it up on my website at offplanetradio.com. Yes, there is a website back online live, again, for the first time in many years, offplanetradio.com. And we'll put it up there with all the resources. But this video of the Brillouin technology running, can you kind of take us through what we're seeing there? It's obviously functioning. It's obviously got levels that are showing us that it's throwing off this energy, and it is running what's known as a Stirling machine. So maybe give us a little bit of narrative that kind of welds with that visual imagery.
Okay. Imagine something the size of a refrigerator, small refrigerator, with you would walk around it, you'd see some water in the back of a lot of various different wires. Now, there was a big debate and discussion by a lot of people over a long period of time as what you show the public. Okay? Mm-hmm. What do you want to do to show the public, and how do you want to show it, and where do you want to show it, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff was discussed hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That's the first thing. Second thing, what form do you want to put it into steam and show steam, or show something where there's a visual response or a kinesthetic response to the temperature? Or are we going to, put up a little, create some electricity and show a little light going off? Or are we going to make something move, actually task the device to do energy work? Mm-hmm. And that's why they did the Stirling engine, because it wasn't, if you were looking at it, people don't know what they're looking at, and it needs to be told. They need to be told, almost like as if they don't know what they're looking at, and they're blinded, and they need to be stated what they're looking at when you're speaking to somebody that is intending on investing money into the situation, because everything having to do with everything regarding this leads to a fulcrum point where the use of language, cognitive dissonance, lack of mosaic perception, tremendous misunderstanding, a list of things, of hoops you've got to get through before you can even discuss the money about what is actually happening. This is a phenomena that is not discussed anywhere in the field at all, because there's no discussion whatsoever about the Benjamin Wolf, who wrote Metalinguistics. He said it's easier if you can get a Hopi Indian to explain the theory of relativity than a scientist.
That's true. Yeah,
that's true.
That's true.
So everything having to do with this subject matter, it's almost, if I were to try and, it was my job to make somebody understand it. which I had done. You have to alter and completely reframe all the language tapered to the person that is tongue blind, basically, because they don't know what the hell they're looking at. And there's a process now. It's almost like you have to deprogram the the investor because they don't know what they're looking at, and then because of their blindness, they have to go back to what they think is knowledgeable science. The entire terrain of this entire thing, it's like a minefield.
It's a mind field.
That's correct. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a mind field. It's exactly what it is because, I mean, if I had my way, I would blindfold everybody that I talk to about this, especially investors, shut off all sensory input, and then completely speak to them in a different way so you can get through to them. Because people are, there's actual cognitive major conflict with this.
So I'm looking, the people that attended this conference, this was obviously going to attract some wandering souls from the general public. Aside from Carl Page, we had Peter Diamandis, who's the founder of X Prize. You have a professor at the University of Cambridge, a philosophy professor. You have an MIT scientist, several people from the Institute of Applied Energy in Japan. So in the consensus of what went down in those days, obviously there were people there who were sufficiently savvy enough to know what they were seeing. I'm wondering what the response was from the intelligentsia.
Oh, first of all, there was no response to anything spectacular there in regards to all the people that attended until ARPA said, "Oh, we're going to put some money into this and do some research." Then that was the only emotion that I saw the entire time there, because most of this, everybody knew each other already. There was maybe 4 young people there, like in their 20s, maybe there's some younger students, maybe 4 women. These were all the leaders in the field. And some of them, if they weren't present, they would come through on Zoom. So everybody knew everybody already. So it was like a reunion of sorts. It had that type of feeling to it. But they're in a different mindset entirely. But there was the nuclear world there that is doing the biggest intellectual I don't even want to say what I want to say.
Mind F.
Yeah. I've ever seen. Because people, when they find out who's involved, who's invested, what companies are just all surrounding this whole issue discreetly. I mean, NDAs have to be signed with companies that just have discussions about it. We're not allowed to show that stuff. I mean, it's stupid what's going on because of the level of the duration of this going on. All it is now is I see ancient gaslighting going on. You know what I mean by that. That's what it is.
This is kind of like the old stories of South America when the conquistadors landed. And you wondered how they could have possibly taken advantage of these fierce tribes that inhabited the regions of South America. And the answer is the ships were right at shoreline view, and they couldn't see them because they weren't trained to see them. It took the shaman to point out to the waters to show them the conquistadors' ships.
Yeah.
That's what this is like. This is...
yep, that's correct.
This is programmed cognitive dissonance.
We know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't a fish.
Right. Because, exactly. And I'll give you another example. When I was doing some back-end research before we went to microphone tonight. I randomly pulled up Wikipedia in Cold Fusion. Well, to say that Wikipedia is a tool of disinformation, of course, begs a larger question. But it says, and this is just the opening paragraph, cold fusion is a hypothesized type of nuclear reaction that would occur at or near room temperature. It always speaks in some future tense as if, and the whole article is posed as if. In other words, because of what occurred with Fleischmann and Pons in 1989, everything that has occurred over this 30 plus years interim has been nothing but them padding the walls of cognitive dissonance even fatter so that nobody could recognize this was a viable concept, despite the fact that there was proof of work even in Fleischmann and Pons' work. The problem was, and this is the problem we have now, over unity, free energy, things that happen that create something from seemingly nothing is something the human, I will say the living beings upon this world cannot yet fathom, because we have been entrained into a mindset of lack, of incompleteness, of the novel idea that we were supposed to shovel into our pockets and break our backs in order to pay for everything that we're given. And so it's kind of like, in one way, it's the opposite of slave mentality, because it's the mentality of serfdom, of an economic serfdom that put a meter on your house and said, this is the electricity that's coming into your house and you will pay this per kilowatt each month. Which, go back and research the history of tariffs and you will find out we were never supposed to even fucking pay for this power. That was supposed to be taken over by big industry. And this goes into a bigger equation here. Big industry was the reason why we wound up with a power grid like we have today. Done differently. Nikola Tesla comes into the equation as well here. Done differently, the confabulation of Westinghouse and Edison would not have required the type of infrastructure that was required the way we did it, because industry was the beneficiary. The corporations were the beneficiary. And as a result of that, the earliest tariffs, which you won't probably be able to find in your local archives, were written so that the throw-off energy from this power system would be for street lamps and home use. And, that deal was done, and then it was broken almost immediately. And that's a piece of crypto history that most people don't know about. And what we have now is we have an emergent technology that breaks all of the rules. And we're now at this nexus where, as a race of people, we have to begin to address in our own consciousness, not the physics behind this, but the consciousness behind it. Because the fact that it works and the fact that that machine was able to do what it did in plain view of spectators in Mountain View, California on July 25th means that consciousness has now changed, because it's come to the public forefront.
Correct. That's what's really happened. So there's a whole total repositioning of consciousness that's going on. Now, I brought up the American Indian issue regarding the language encoded into those particular reality tunnels that make up the American Indians. Mm-hmm. When I ask them about this tech, they describe it in a completely, totally different way. And from everything that I've seen and everybody that's talked about it, the only time I've ever seen somebody communicate about this and actually get through to them, it's been the American Indians, because of the work of Phyllis Young, who is she would be, if there were a female version of the American Indian movement, she'd be the leader, because Russell Means was her colleague. So when they talk about it, then you can hear a pin drop behind the scenes, and what's going to happen in days here. Not sure the date. It could be World Water Week is coming up. Now, what's interesting is that the Lakota Sioux, who consider the water sacred, is going to be speaking on a White House panel regarding the sacredness of water. And then they're going to be talking about this technology. And what's interesting is in the past 3 or 4 days, I was contacted by Crow Dog's son. Justin Shots Two Arrows is his name. And I spoke to him, and he talked to me for like 10, 15 minutes just about the water. And the way the language he used has a completely different feel to it. It was English, though he did do some expressions in the Lakota language. But he said that we're essentially about to make a partnership with nature.
Yes.
We're making a partnership with nature. That's what's really happening. And he viewed the cold fusion as a partnership to return to our root, the earth, essentially, back to self. So she's going to be speaking about this on the White House panel in the next couple of days, and immediately after that, she's being flown to Los Angeles to attend the Emmys, because this is the same woman that was involved with the cold fusion during Standing Rock, but it was all covered up. Mm-hmm. So, and here's another thing too, is the movie is called End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock. That final cut is nowhere near, not even close to what there originally was going to be. There were so many people that withdrew content from that because it was so controversial. It terrified a bunch of film commissions, investors, everybody. But because it contained everything having to do with this technology. Because at the center of that conflict, which that film was about, was this technology. And it was all being censored. And I know because I was there for the entire thing. And that now it's going to been nominated for an Emmy. Phyllis Young will be speaking about this on World Water Day, and then she goes off to the Emmys. In the movie, I just found out 24 hours ago, just won a big award. The director called me, and she goes, "James, it's actually happening. It's actually happening." And the cold fusion at the same time. And I said, "That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right." Mm-hmm. Because I told her, I said, "Listen, this thing is running outside of a lab. I know that doesn't sound like anything to a normal person who doesn't know what the hell's going on. But when you look at this and find that in this chain of events that's happened just in the last couple of weeks, I mean, before you called, Vice called, people from Vice News, and other European news agencies I've talked to in the last couple of days, and I've seen a substantial shift. Finally, but I'm also getting pissing off people too.
Yeah, of course. That's it's a war of attrition out there.
Yes, that's absolutely that. And so one of the things that's going to come out, which is interesting, is I talked to the guy that is doing all the fundraising, right? If people heard how and what people have gone through to financially move this forward, people would think they would walk in straight into a mental ward. That's how crazy it is, because the whole world is telling them to fix the environment and go green and do all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, nobody's really doing that at all. And this is the only thing that actually worked in the first place. And that's what it makes it so crazy.
we're hearing screams everywhere. They just, Biden signed this bill today that I guess has baked, this was the skeletal remains of Build Back Better after,
Right.
He was basically handed his ass by even his own people. So somewhere baked into this bill, there are obviously environmental incentives going into play. This is money that will obviously get doled out to big corporations. Some nominal stuff, probably windmills and freaking solar panels, which,
right.
The best technology the last century had to offer. Thank you very much. And
right.
I'm thinking more about the fact that the climate has shifted. Most of this is natural, it's normal, but then you look at the oceans, and this is, goes back into the sacredness of water and the amount of plastics and petrochemical residues that are contaminating our oceans right now. Our oceans are literally the bloodstream of the earth, the saline solution that courses through the veins of the earth.
Yep,
and so
that's
the
right.
real crisis has to do with all the dirty energy that we've produced over the last century and a quarter of, big oil. And now we're at the place where the reckoning is coming. They know it. They've been divesting quietly. And the week after Mountainview conference, the ICCF, lo and behold, comes an announcement from nuclear industry regarding fusion.
Yep, that's right.
Fusion. Not cold fusion. This is, as opposed to the fissionable energy that we've been getting from our nuclear reactors, this is simply the other side of that, which is fusion, which is feasible, but it's big fusion. It's big, hot fusion. It requires, again, another major structure of plants and more facilities in order to be able to produce this on scale. And so I'm looking at this machine and the meters and the little Stirling engine running. And see, the difference is this isn't even an infant yet. This is a fetus in terms of technological development. To take it to market, to scale it, to get it to a place where people can see it as a viable technology. To me, it feels like I already can envision that future. I can see that. I understand that. The average person looks at this, and again, because of the cognitive dissonance that's been installed into,
right.
The mass consciousness for a century or longer, we can't yet grasp exactly how this addresses something real to us, because it's not real to us. It's not powering a computer or a cell phone. But at the same time, where we are now, and I'm struggling to even get this concept out, this is where we need the Lakota Sioux to. We need the language of the birds right now is what we really need. We need angel speak to articulate the idea that this is a technology that were the world investment markets to put 1/10,000th of their
exactly
their investments into it, given the shoestring budget that this has been developed upon. It's very feasible that in a period from 3 to 5 years, we could see staged development where these became viable as in-home units generating heat.
Yep.
So let's talk about that a little bit to build the narrative of exactly where this goes, because we've danced around this as a race for so long. This entropy that we deal with, this consumption of carbon, which really goes back many centuries, because coal and oil were basically the same substance. It's all carbon-based in the earth, and all that we're doing is at a really base level, all we're doing is burning carbon. And that's interacting with our atmosphere. And then everything else that pinions off of that, all the plastics, all the fuels, all of the textiles, all of the things that are big industry that we consume constantly. Everything it sits in front of you at your computer or your tablet or your mobile phone relies on this dependency of this carbon-based system. And so we've proliferated that. And now we have to figure out how to get out of this.
Yeah, it's all there. It's interesting because the process to market, it's easy, actually. I mean, it's really easy.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
And everybody knows it's easy. And everybody behind the scenes are like, what the hell is going on? What are we doing? Because when I was quietly talking with the science guys, all the veterans there, they all know this is going on. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do next? How are we going to do them? Da, 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 da. These big conversations are underway right now of substantial change. I mean, there was an aerospace company that was there, and he just was totally blown away about the possibilities. And he didn't even know what to do because this is big. I don't know how this is going to work, but it's going to work. And he was just kind of trying to determine the entrance in to the business world and where and who was going to do it, essentially. There's a lot of working parts, and it's only that way. I mean, psychological working parts, that's what I'm referring to. When doing all this, and a lot of the public wouldn't understand first out of the bat because they don't understand the strain and criticism and harassment that this evokes, and it's basically just so people understand what the wall is, what's behind the wall, because I don't know why it's so difficult for people to understand what's behind the National Security Act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's the real world in there, behind there. And it's been there the entire time. And those people with that access to that tech are deciding who does what and how and when and who gets acknowledged and to what extent, basically. That's what I feel about it after, because I walked around in a very different kind of mode, trying like seeing how this is going to be born. And it's 100% apparent to me now that it won't have anything to do with money that pushes everything across the finish line. It's not, money will be used, but that's not ultimately the thing that pushes it across the line. Because I think the alteration of consciousness through certain channels is the only thing that's going to pull it through.
Exactly. Where we are now in terms of consciousness, and it goes into what I was ranting about earlier, because I don't know how else to preface this, but we are at a nexus. Anybody that's followed my show for the last almost 3 years now and followed the Eye of the Needle series knows that I have been talking about what was coming in 2019, what arrived in 2020, and what we have gone through really since about 2017, which I call the Eye of the Needle. We are in a place in history, a place in time and space, as we so understand it, with an energetic that is completely new for humanity. We've never been here before. It is the opportunity of eons in terms of human unfoldment, because we can quantum leap into consciousness. And I'm not talking about ascension or, any of the New Age bullshit. I'm talking about the fact that it's like watching lights light up on a map. A little pin here, a little pin there. That's where we're at right now. There is a consciousness awakening going on. And the field effect from that is the people who are pushing the incentive to progress, which is the type of technology that we're talking about. When I think of cold fusion, and we've had this conversation before, because you cannot. I mean, Fleshman and Pons did proofs of work. There's theoretical science behind all of this. At the end of the day, the physics doesn't explain completely what's going on underneath what we call cold fusion or LENR. It doesn't explain free energy because we, again, as I said earlier, we're entrained. And now we have to think differently. When you said money isn't what's going to get this done, and that was a conversation that we had a couple days ago, it's profound because we need to begin to look at money differently too. You see, money is the root of all this poverty consciousness and this serfdom that we've lived under. And that's been the control mechanism that's basically been placed like a chain around our collective necks for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
Getting to the mindset. And this goes back to the conversation, and you crypto people out there, you people really need to step it up, because I know that there's a bunch of you guys out there that have made a shit ton load of money off of cryptos. Let me tell you something. When you can remove the factor of the inverse energy consumption that has been done as a result of mining and building blockchains, when we can solve that problem and say, okay, you've mined all of these blocks and it's consumed terabytes of energy. Well, here it is. Here's the incentive. There's no cost anymore. Now you can mint money. Literally mint money. When money is freely pulled through a machine out of the ether, it then becomes freely divisible, open source, and simply another resource that humans learn how to manage intelligently without the greed that has gone through our veins for again, tens of thousands of years.
Bullseye. 100% correct. And I've talked to about 6 or 7 crypto groups that have come to me over the years, and I warned them all. And their response was of, standard semi-disbelief. And but that's going to change now. I'm already witnessing the change going on right now and hearing about it. Like I said before, this call took place at the Vice news group, whatever. Somebody from there has reached out, and then huge industrial publication news in Singapore. They already have started writing up a big story on what's happened, and it's being freely distributed to all the investment capital that's shifting now. When I was at that conference, they were telling us that there was billions and billions and billions being moved into nuclear and hydrogen, the biggest change ever in history, that type of changeover. So I think it's the real conversation has not taken place yet. But I think what's going to happen now is the initiation of that conversation will happen on World Water Day, and then there will be a level of I guess the easiest way of saying is spirituality included in the rest of the conversation, which is what it needs most. So we'll see what happens, because now at the same time, all of this has happened at the same time. Oliver Stone just released a documentary film called Nuclear, which basically discussed everything that we're talking about. I don't know if LENR was included in that subject at all, but I just got an email from him a couple of weeks ago about attending this particular event, but he was in Europe, so he couldn't attend. And then I sent him all the press releases and so forth. So I don't know if it was included in his film or not, but he's going to be confronted with it, probably by some press conference or something, that people are going to be aware that this is going on now, because word's out on the street now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different situation now, and people should begin a conversation about it and ask their so-called elected employees to look into it.
Your public servants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who unfortunately have lined their pockets again, for at least 100 years that we know of, at the behest of the very people who ran and run the carbon-based energy system, not the least of which is a very famous East Coast family, beginning with the letter R. We don't need to mention them. And moving forward, but it begins with breaking the mindset that we have. And, this is something I do a lot when I'm meditating, is I will hold a thought into suspension and begin to work through the materialization. And I mean, this is where humans have not yet learned to work together, but this should be the subject of meditation groups and people who are doing what we call manifestation. Imagine a future.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. 100%. That should be an honor.
Imagine the future.
That's really what needs to be done. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Put that energy out there. Our mindsets as a grace of people are what needs to change, and change profoundly. And what you said earlier about Lakota Sioux and the son of the shaman, and you should explain who the shaman is, by the way. Let's have that conversation.
Okay, Crow Dog was the spiritual leader and one of the founders of the American Indian movement when Russell Means was involved with Wounded Knee. He's considered the shaman or medicine man, the spiritual leader of that tribe for that piece of history. And he never went to school. He never learned how to read. So he had a complete, total firsthand knowledge of the original language. In other words, he was not destroyed by Gutenberg in the book. They did not reorganize his brain with the use of the written word. So he was very American Indian and had not gone through the school system or anything. And he was profoundly, what else word to say? Powerful, very powerful. I mean, I heard inside information that was given a couple of days ago about what he would be when he was invited to appear anywhere. He was invited and paid to create rain dance, the real thing, right?
The real thing.
He was paid, and it was like, okay, I don't know how that came to be, but somebody out there wanted to find out if the legend is true, and not only the legend was true, it poured, and when he did his rain dance, and that became a separate thing he was doing while he was the spiritual advisor to Phyllis Young and Russell and Dennis Banks and all the people that really fought for American Indian rights. And now I might add, since most people don't understand, according to at the legal center of this entire thing, they have not been acknowledged as humans as of yet. They're still savages and animals according to the papal bulls, but the that has since been rectified, I'm told, and that actually shows up in the End of the Line film that Phyllis is going to nominate for an Emmy. So Crow Dog, I did meet him
spent a little bit of time with him at Standing Rock when we were formulating a letter or drafting. It was actually like he was dictating to me terms to Barry Storo.
Or as we know them,
Barack, right.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Right. So he's drafting a letter, and I talked to a little bit about, because there was a lot of commotion in the room, and he was trying to stay warm because it was really, really cold. It was so cold there, and he had all these blankets around him, and all these people coming up to him and asking him, and he was, telling me, write this, say this, say this, say this. And then he talked a little bit about what was going on at Standing Rock, and he told me that all the ancestors are showing up here, meaning that it wasn't just 5,000 people there. There was hundreds of thousands, hundreds. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And they can, and when he said that, a light went off in me, because if you were there, it was supernatural there. Nothing like that I've ever felt ever in all my travels was like the energy there. And then when he called that, then I realized why he's the spiritual elder. So he recently went to the other side, and his son kind of took his place, and now he is the advisor to Phyllis and the Lakota Sioux tribe, and travels all over the place. So there's that component that's involved with the entire field, and it's highly significant.
It's highly significant, yes, because what we're talking about.
This is exactly.
This is science meets the supernatural. And when we are
correct
in that place, this is what my guides have been talking about in the Receiver series, of where we're tapping in to that next level of consciousness. There is no difference between generating water from the sky, doing a rain dance, and doing a 0-point energy machine. They're just different.
Here's the real interesting part. This is the part where I was given inside information, and but I wasn't told, okay, you can't talk about this. I was told inside information for a reason. After I spoke to Crow Dog's son and Phyllis, and it was Crow Dog's son that said about his relationship to water and where they're really from. That they're the star people.
I just got hairs standing up on my arms. Yeah.
And he went there, and I knew exactly what he's talking about. And then he said to me, James, he thanked me for all the stuff that I had done with those guys. And then he said, why do you think they're so interested in our blood? And then it all came down on me. So what I got out of that situation is that there's money power, and then there's spiritual power. And they have profound spiritual power in relation to this entire situation, which none of the scientists, they all know, kind of, Phyllis is over on the side there, but they really don't know. And most of the public don't know who they are, who they really are. See, Crow Dog's son told me that because of the distortion of the language, that their ancestors and where they really came from kind of got lost in translation. But they're star people, and they said that their job essentially is to bring in electricity through water. That's what he said. Not heat. He didn't go and say no, straight to electricity with water, and that's the way it should be. And there's very matter of fact about it. And the way he said it, though. Remember what I said? It's easier to hear about Einstein's theory of relativity from a Navajo than from an English language perspective.
Or
So,
because much like what has happened with the genocide that's taken place with the native peoples, not just here in North America, but all over the world, they have almost eradicated this native wisdom connected to the earth, the sky, and the ancestors. And this is so important because when you begin to understand the arc of life spanning out over generations and generations, thousands, hundreds of generations, and the wisdom that accumulates, that what he said about the blood, it comes through the blood. It's hereditary in a way that we don't completely understand because we don't completely understand actual genetics, just like we don't actually understand engineering and physics. That the component of thought, which has been boxed in with this language trap that we have that came from Gutenberg and the Anglicization, yeah, there you go, Anglicization, that's what it was, of language, has stunted us to the point where we may have great left brain powers of doing what we do now, but we've lost the ability to communicate in the etheric sense and in the psychic realm.
yeah, the Crow Dog and his son, and from what I could tell, Korzybski would have a field day talking about these guys because they know inherently the map is not the territory. And their language is set up for that. Mm-hmm. Because they know they're awake in the dream. And they know about the, what do they say? Words are not things. Maps are not territories. Symbols are not reference. Perception is not reality. And there are no identical relationships in nature. No two things are entirely identical to one another.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they are, when they speak and how they do it, I just seen massive pattern eruptions of people in a very short space of time. It's interesting. So you have that element that is running parallel to the entire scientific establishment, trying to recode through their language maps what the hell is going on. Still, that's what's really going on, but they'll never say that because they'll never bring in gender semantics or metalinguistics because the way we use words influence our perceptions. So they're lost in language.
Right, which even goes into the whole quantum grammar thing, which we won't because we don't have time.
Right.
But, you know, I've talked about this on the show before. The programming that's in the language and the distortions in the way we speak and in the way we write and in the way we've conducted ourselves in conveyance of energetics, which is linguistically encoded. And we're at that place right now. The Lakota, the indigenous native, I like native better, the native people of our world understand this. They're ready for it. You know, they're not a bunch of primitive spear chuckers. They are really people who understand how things work in nature in a supernatural way. We have had to left brain ourselves through this using machines to get to the place where we can even begin to understand it. And to me, that's really tangibly my takeaway from seeing the video of the Brilliant machine running the Stirling engine. It was tangible. It was palpable. It was real. I mean, I wish I could have stood in that room and felt the energy coming from it. But we're at this place now where it's decision time for humanity. We have this,
that's it.
We have this opportunity.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, and they are at the heart of it because one of the things that was important was to determine where Carl Page's intentions were at. He was interviewed by a Florida radio station with a NASA scientist, and the questions were pre-scripted.
But when you saw the interview, it doesn't look pre-scripted at all. Point being is that there wasn't, there's never been a large presence from the movers and shakers behind the scenes speaking to the press. But then things changed because one of the reasons I wanted to go to this thing is I wanted to talk to him personally. And my feeling is that he is not in anywhere the same philosophical place as his brother. In fact, it's quite different. It's quite different because he's already crossed over into the world of possibility. Mm-hmm. He's already there, and he's already going through some of the battles that I've had to deal with myself. And first thing he did is he brought up Phyllis's name almost right away, and said that he definitely wanted to speak to her, which is all that's being arranged now. So you're seeing those totally two different type of realities in your face right now. Mm-hmm. Gigantic, huge business meets a 5 foot tall Lakota woman spirit warrior.
Quite an
dense.
Arc. It's quite an arc. Anything else as we close out this first hour that you want to put out there into the etheric waves?
Start visualizing it coming out.
Yeah. Just like we talked about telepathy the last time, your imagination is more real than the things that you see in front of your eyes. Don't forget that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important.
And like the quote that was in Walter Boat put in its book, and I understood exactly what he was talking about when he put it in there. The only war is a war against the imagination. All others are subsumed by it. So the imagination and our own visualization of it is pertinent to the whole thing coming out now.
It is. It is. We're going to close it up. We're going to do probably a short session for the people who support us on Patreon, the cool kids. And James, thanks for coming on the platform and for doing what you've done for so many years. I mean, the trials and tribulations are endless, and the pay is certainly not worth it. But you've done a stand-up job of bringing this forward.
Thanks. We'll see what happens next.
This is OffPlanet Radio.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, the truth is out there. It's inside you. It's one of those many streams of consciousness that you can begin to hold in your mind. I'm Randy Moggins. This is OffPlanet Radio. See you the next time.